In beekeeping, there are some rules that everyone just seems to accept as fact. But what if one of the biggest ones, the idea that you absolutely need two brood boxes, is actually holding you back? Today, we're going to dig into a simpler and maybe even more powerful way to manage your hives.
So let's just jump right in. This quote really nails the whole debate, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got decades of beekeeping tradition. Well, pretty much everyone is taught. And on the other, you have this simpler method that its fans claim is easier, more efficient, and, believe it or not, super productive.
All right, so before we dive into this alternative, let's just quickly talk about the standard way of doing things. For a lot of beekeepers, especially when you're starting out, the double brood chamber is just the way. It's taught as the default. This is probably what you're used to seeing. Two big boxes, one stacked on top of the other, giving the queen and all the baby bees a ton of room. And the logic seems pretty simple, right? More space equals better. But is that really always the case?
Right away, you can see the trade-offs. With two boxes, you're inspecting 20 frames, not 10. The queen could be in either box, which basically turns your inspection into a huge scavenger hunt. It's heavy to lift, and figuring out what's going on inside is just more complicated. The single-chamber approach pretty much flips all of that on its head.
Okay, so let's flip the script and look at this single-chamber solution. And the whole argument here is that simplicity isn't just about making your life easier, it's actually about managing the bees themselves way more effectively.
Yeah, and this quote really gets to the heart of it. Think about it. If you can spot a problem faster, you can fix it sooner. It helps you keep your colonies healthier. So that single box, it's not just a box, it's a tool for making better, faster decisions.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, your hive inspections are suddenly twice as fast. Finding the queen, not a game of hide and seek across 20 frames anymore. And if there is a problem, hey, it's all right there in one spot. This setup also forces the bees to be super efficient with their space, which leads to some pretty amazing results.
Okay, but all this leads to the one big, obvious question that I'm sure you're already asking. Is one box really enough? So let's actually run the numbers, because this is where things get really interesting.
Right. This is the big one. This is the number one pushback you hear. The fear is that, hey, if you stick the queen in just one box, you're going to stunt the colony's growth. But what does the math actually say?
Okay, first up, let's talk about the space itself. You've got a standard deep box, right? 10 frames. Each side of a frame has roughly 3,500 cells. You do the math, and you've got over 70,000 cells to work with. That's our total available real estate.
All right, part two of the equation. How much space does a queen actually need? A good, healthy queen, at her absolute peak, is going to lay around 1,500 eggs a day. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but 1,500 is a really solid number to work with for our calculation.
Okay, so now let's put it all together. We know a worker bee takes 21 days to develop, from egg to adult. So if our queen is laying 1,500 eggs every single day for that whole 21-day cycle, she's going to need, 1,500 times 21, that's 31,500 cells. That's the amount of space that's occupied with brood at any given time.
And this is the moment where it all clicks. You put the space she needs right next to the space she has, and it's not even a contest. That one single box gives a super prolific queen more than double the room she needs to lay eggs. There's a massive buffer. So what are the bees doing with all that leftover room? Well, they get incredibly efficient. About half the space is for brood, sure, but the rest gets packed with all the essentials. Honey for food, and this beautiful band of pollen right where the nurse bees need it. It creates this perfectly organized little world, a self-contained nursery. The math is one thing. It's pretty convincing. But does all this fancy theory actually translate into real-world results, like, more honey? Well, the answer seems to be a huge, resounding yes. Get this, in a good season, these single-box hives can crank out an incredible 200 pounds of honey. And that just completely blows up the idea that a smaller brood nest means a weaker, less productive colony. What happens is the bees just focus all that energy upwards, right into the honey supers where you want it. But wait, it gets even better. That huge honey harvest happened after they'd already split the hives to make new colonies, or nukes. So the system isn't just about honey. It's also a powerhouse for sustainably growing your entire bee operation. So the takeaway here is pretty crystal clear. Keeping your hives in a single brood box doesn't limit them at all. In fact, by making your job easier and your management more efficient, it seems like you actually unlock the colony's true potential for both growth and honey. All right, so we've looked at the theory.
we've crunched the numbers, and we've seen the pretty amazing results. The only thing left is to think about, what are you going to do with this information?
And look, at the end of the day, you shouldn't just take my word for it. The whole point of this isn't to say there's only one right way to do beekeeping. It's just to show you a really compelling alternative, one that's backed up by some solid evidence. And really, the only way you'll know if it works for you and your bees is to just give it a shot.
So it really all boils down to this one question. We've seen how a simpler system can make your life easier with faster inspections and clearer problem solving. The powerful idea here is that by simplifying your own work, you might actually be unlocking more from your hives. Could doing less work actually mean getting more honey from your bees? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you're heading out to the bee yard.